All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today I have Coach Gardner. He's a defensive coordinator at Corner Canyon High School in Utah. Coach, thanks for coming on for the first time ever.
Yeah, excited, man. Excited to talk a little ball, and you know, I'll focus on your background. I'll focus on the Illinois piece. I'll focus on the Bears piece. I'll choose to ignore the Cubs part, so we'll be good.
Oh,
Other than that, my Central Illinois roots, right? Like people are always shocked when I say I'm like a Bears fan and a Cardinals fan, and I'm like, well, I grew up an hour and a half from St. Louis, right? We had a single A baseball team, a Cardinal-based baseball team in Springfield, so like of course. And like my uncle, like my dad was a bricklayer, so like we never had like time to go do stuff like that, but my uncle did. And he worked for Staley's in Decatur, and
hmm.
so he would actually have vacation time and take me down there. So he'd take me down, we'd sit in the bleachers and watch Cardinals games. So I'll just put something over the little cubby thing right there, and we'll be good to go.
well, well, I apologize for that, but yeah, I grew up by Champaign, so it was like I was right in the middle. You were either Cubs or Cardinals. It was
Yeah,
one or the other.
100% right. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like my little brother is like 15 years younger than me. And like I remember like my mom would take him out to the farm for his like stay with the grandma, and she'd take him out in like a Cardinals outfit and he'd come home in a Cubs outfit. Right. Like with even within the family there was yeah. So you're Charleston guy, right? You're that area, right? Matthew Charleston.
Well, I
Is that where
went
you
to,
was that
I grew up like the 50 and Oakwood area by Danville and
oh,
Champaign.
okay.
But then
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
I went to Eastern though in Charleston, so uh, I took that long college route
Nice.
of changing my major four, five, six, seven times, uh, and just coached at
Nice.
Charleston. Just kind of they needed coach. I was coaching at Oakwood for a little bit, and then they needed coaches at Charleston, so it kind of worked out. So that's just offense coordinator there for a little bit,
Nice.
and basketball, track. I did all three.
Nice. When were you doing track?
That would have been from 2000. When did I coach or what did I do?
Yeah, when?
What year would that have been? 2015 or 16, maybe through 2018.
Okay. Yeah, it would just miss crossing paths. I coached track for a couple years when I was in Riverton, but I left Illinois in 2014.
Yeah, I started coaching football at Charleston. It was like the same time. I think I started track, and then Charleston got a new head football coach. I went up to him and brought me on. Uh,
Nice.
he lived by Mount Zion in Decatur and drove to Charleston every day to coach football.
Jeez. That's
Uh,
not an awful drive, but not fun. And it's not my commute now. My commute now is 3.5 minutes.
nice, nice.
Yeah, yeah. No stoplights, a couple stop signs, a couple roundabouts. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, he was a grain farmer, so he would farm, and depending on where he was, it might be like an hour and 15-minute drive for him, like to get over there.
Yeah, yeah. That's wild.
Yeah, and but yeah, that's when I was down there and ran my course there because how do I put this? I was the only one not born and raised in Charleston on staff when he left because he left and I stayed because
Okay.
I was like 24 years old. Hey, now you're the offensive coordinator and you think you know it all and you're like, okay, I'm whatever. And the words that kept coming out of people's mouths were, well, this is not how we have always done things, or this is what we did. And one day I said, can you show me all your state title trophies? Can you show me all your conference title trophies? And they really couldn't. And I said, well, your way doesn't work. Like, and so I just kind of I ran my course. Like they didn't like that.
Yeah,
And
no, I get it. Yeah, and being 24 is tough, man. Like, I didn't start coaching until I was 30, right? So like I was outside of the K-12 world completely. Kind of always had the thought of coaching, but just never had the opportunity or whatever. And then about I was about 29. I was living in St. Louis, moved back. My wife and I were dating. It was kind of the all right, first one to get a job in the other person's area. So I was in St. Louis, choosing Springfield, and ended up moving back. Got a job at my hometown as an IT guy, and started getting into coaching. Um, you know, it, and so timeline wise, I think probably from when you started coaching to being a coordinator versus me being a coordinator is probably pretty similar, except as a 30 plus year old man, I probably handled things right, like differently and had a different perspective on it. But um, yeah, man, that's tough, especially when it's like well, this is the way we've always done it. Like when I was at Riverton, a place that hasn't had much success, um, we were actively doing things, intentionally doing things that we'd never done, and try to going away to do things a different way. And we were doing stuff that wasn't yielding a lot, but we knew it was the right stuff to do.
Mhm.
And then whenever we all left and went on, again, ran its course, and life took us in different directions. Every time we started doing the stuff we were doing at Riverton anywhere else, it took off like a rocket ship, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
so Hamilton Lee goes down to Mascuda. He does the stuff what he'd been doing at Riverton with athletic PE and weightlifting
Mhm.
and all that stuff. And then they start kicking ass. They go to Joliet Catholic, win at Joliet Catholic, which is, as far as like if you're an Illinois boy, that's got some power in it to go into their place and get them. And then Hamilton got fired from Riverton. The next year he was in the finals with Plains. You
Mhm.
know,
Yep.
um, I got told that I wasn't really a football guy because we started having success in track. They thought I was a track guy, and I never ran track. I was a baseball kid, football, basketball, baseball.
Right.
And I was having more success as a wrestling coach and a track coach, two sports I'd never played. Um, so and then so then I get away and I go, get out of there, and then I've coached in two state title games now. I've been the bridesmaid a couple times, but like it's wild. You just take the stuff that we were doing there and started using it other places, and Riverton's a tough place to win. I like the staff they have in place right now, but man, they got their hands full. Like down there, you go 3-6, you've done a good job,
Right.
like a
Right.
real good job.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things where like perspective on what you're doing coaching wise, right? Like one of the things that I've done this off season, keeps trying to remind myself, is that winning's hard,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
So I can get spoiled where I'm at right now, and we had a lot of success when I was at Park City. Um, and I probably won more games in my last 6 years than I did in the first 8 or 10 as a
Wow.
coach. Like it's
Yeah.
almost inversely proportional, right? Like, and so for me, like when I'm watching like NFL or college games and something weird happens, it reminds me like it really is hard to win football games. It's easy to lose them. It's hard to win them,
Right.
to try to keep that perspective because, yeah, I mean, but last year, we went, we won 11-3, and it was considered like a rough year, here. And so, right. I mean,
Right.
there's some years yeah, 11 would have took me 3 or 4 years at Riverton to do that. Right. And, yeah, so that's, I try to remind myself how hard it is so you don't get spoiled.
Right. The best season I've ever been a part of was 10-1 at Lombard East. I went there in 2018. We went 9-0, won our first playoff game. East St. Louis came to town, so that's kind of where it ended.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. The Flyers, baby. Yeah. No, we in 2019 was the state title game at Park City, and we finished the season. I think we finished the season. We went 13-1. We lost state title, went 13-1, right? And so
right.
we were walking off the practice field, like going
Yeah.
into week 10, and one of our assistant coaches, who's now the OC up there, was like, "Man, I've never been 9-0." And I just started laughing. I'm like, I've never been 2-0. The year before we went to the state semifinals, but we lost. We lost
Right.
early. We were actually like, we were like 1-3 at a point or something,
Uh-huh.
1-2 at a point. Like we were like, I'm like, I've never been 2-0. And he starts laughing. He's like, never? I'm like, never. I've never been 2-0, let alone 9-0. Like it was such an uncomfortable feeling for me to be the hunted. We were preseason number one, all that stuff, right?
Right.
Like, and the only reason we were preseason one, was that we pulled up an upset in the quarters against the team that ended up beating us in the finals that year, right? And so,
Right.
um, yeah, I've never in my life had been the team that everyone just assumed would win, and kind of thing where you were almost the hunted. So yeah, it's that Corner Canyon, that's the case at Corner. Like Corner Canyon, this is gonna be a crazy number, but let's say we lost 3 games last year, right?
Right.
The 5 years before I got there, they were 63-3.
Jesus.
Yeah, so like, and our losses were to the two-time state champs in 5A.
Right.
Asterisk, they have like we talked, enrollments are weird in Utah. It's 10 through 12.
Right.
Their enrollment, and we petition up. So their enrollment was bigger than us. So they're the 5A state champs, but they had a bigger enrollment than two of the four teams in the classification above them
Right.
because they're growing so fast. Like in the
Yeah.
2 year window, they have like 2,400 students. So they were like 30% bigger than us. And so we lost them. Very, very good football team.
Right.
And then we lost to Bishop Gorman, right? We lost to Bishop Gorman. That was
Hmm.
interesting. And then we lost the title game to a team we'd beat previously in the season. And so, rough, but you lose to the Nevada State champs, the 5A Utah champs, and then obviously the 6A champs. Like, so everyone that beat us was a champion,
Right.
and they proved it. And so, but if people, I guarantee there are people that are really upset that we lost 3 games, that are like
Like,
shocked and mad that we lost 3 games.
well, that's kind of like Rochester. We won't get into that, but
Mm-hmm.
when they don't make it to a state title game, we see it all the rumblings of about their head coach, and we're like, really, really, like they're upset.
Yep. No, I remember talking to Schiffman.
Yeah.
Tony was at one of their like second round playoff games, and this was in the middle of the run. This was like 5 in a row or 6 in a row,
Yeah.
like whatever. It might have been 5 in a row, working on 6 in a row.
Right.
And he is sitting in the stands, and Derek makes a call on like 3rd and 12. He might have ran something maybe a little bit whatever, but like it's crazy. And they end up punting, right? Now I think they might
Right.
have scored like the 3 possessions before it. They end up punting, and then they come out or whatever and run the ball a couple times and punted it again. And he said the crowd was losing their mind. Right? They've won 5 in a row. I think they were up 21-0 still, and they're like the crowd was pissed and questioning his play calling because you know wild. It's just wild. I'm like, it just proves it. Like you do your best. You gotta trust what you do, because if you need the validation of people not on the sideline,
Hmm.
it's not gonna happen, right? Like, but yeah, no, I would say that the vibes here are very much um, Rochester. But like, imagine if Rochester has guys that were, you have 2,000, students you're playing on
Right.
ESPN and stuff. So, but it's the same pressure of like it's state finals or better. Like it's how do you overachieve in those programs?
Right.
Like it's like literally even winning a title may not be overachieving, right? Like from perspective wise for people, it's like, oh, well, you're supposed to win the title.
Right.
They're like, well, yeah, but we did it. Like, yeah, yeah, but you were supposed to win it. It's almost like you don't get credit. You can only get credit for fucking it up, you
Right.
know? So
That sounds like
weird,
Texas ball.
weird way to be.
Like in Texas, they're all like that.
Yeah, well, Texas, oh, I'll get on my soapbox about Texas, man. Texas is wild because it's your teaching job. It's not
Yes. Yeah.
extracurricular, it's co-curricular,
Right.
right? So like you lose football games, you lose your livelihood.
That's true. Yeah.
Like, you wonder why they're so crazy and why they're so driven? If you have a bad season, the head coach messes up, coordinator messes up, everyone loses their job and you're moving.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, well, we get cut, whatever, then I have my teaching job. No, you don't. It's one. There's only one job, your job, and it is both. And so I get why they're crazy, but also, man, I'm like, that's some wild, wild stress
Hmm.
on like, go 6-4, you might have to move.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know and it's good. They've got resources. They get paid pretty well, and they've got some pretty good class loads. But man, I don't know. I don't think, not that I have the option, I'm not a teacher, but I don't know that I would ever be really interested in coaching in Texas just for that reason.
I never thought of it that way because I knew you had to be a teacher to coach there, but I never thought about
Yeah.
it that way because I had a buddy move down there to do that. And he went to the middle
Mhm.
school first, but they make you coach two sports. Like you have to do, if you do football, you're probably doing track. And
That's the contract, right? That's
right.
the contract. It's co-curricular. So it's like you're going to teach history, you're going to coach football, and you're going to coach what else? Wrestling? Okay, wrestling. Right? Like
Yeah.
it's all one contract. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. I never thought of it that way. So maybe you're in a better spot than Texas because, like, yeah, they want you to win a state title, but at least
Right?
you
I
don't
mean,
lose
I couldn't
everything.
even coach in Texas, right? I couldn't even coach in Texas because I'm not a teacher, right? But
Right.
um, Now, I think there are some levels, some different, like some independent and like private schools where you can do that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a no go. Like, you know, plus and minuses, good for them that they can do it. I also know that coaching shortages are a problem everywhere. And so
Yeah.
it'll see if it ever hits Texas hard enough to where they have to change rules. Um, I've never, um, I think there's a lot of stuff goes on out there about like not, off campus coaches. And as much as I see the value in having guys in the building and having those relationships, as a guy who spent, even though I wasn't a teacher, I was K-12 IT guy, so I was in the building with kids. I just like even I put it out the last couple weeks. I'm looking to add staff, right? So you know, 3 years ago we had a COVID year. They were top 10 in the country,
Hmm.
right? And then they had like a top 50 finish last year, the year before last. I think we were I don't know, top 180 in the country, right?
Right.
Put out D1 guys every year, right? We got guy in the NFL. We're gonna have more guys in the NFL, um, right? Our head coach is what 74-6 in the last 6 seasons,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And I put it out on Twitter. Hey, looking for a couple of coaches, defensive coaches. How many emails do you think I've gotten in 2 weeks after putting that out? How many guys do you think have tried to apply?
I would say 0 or 1.
Yeah, like, I've had a few, right? I've
Okay.
had a few. I've had seven,
Okay.
right? I've had seven. Now, if you take away like relatives, dads or net brothers and stuff, that cut it in half, right? And so it's just like it's amazing to me how hard. Like last year, our staff, I had a first year corner coach, a first year safety coach, and then I picked up another guy who has coached a little bit, but nothing like amazing, like first like experience in like multiple levels,
Hmm.
right? So we had three first year DB coaches. I had an outside linebacker coach who's coached maybe like a handful of years, 5 or 6,
Uh-huh.
and a D line coach was a first year football coach, D line coach, and we were playing for a 6A state title.
Wow.
So I had more experience than my staff combined, right? And so
Right.
like, right, and
Yeah.
so um, and it was just it's one of those things that's wild to me that I have that much trouble trying to bring guys in. And so we'll see what we do. I do have some good candidates this time. I think there's some quality ones. There's some intriguing ones. There is even an EIU Panther on there,
Ooh.
which I didn't expect to see. A Casey Westfield guy applying for a job in Draper, Utah. So that was kind of cool to see, just from a
Yeah.
Illinois thing. But yes, it'll be interesting to see what we do because it's about fit and trying to go through that, and it's also a way for me to like, eventually I want to be a head coach. So it's a little bit about me like trying to hire a staff and do a little bit of that. And we have a couple stipends. I don't know about the teaching jobs. They haven't released all those yet. So a couple of the guys are looking for teaching jobs out of it, which is fine. I
Hmm.
just don't know what we have, right? So
Right.
I'm going to take the next like 2-3 weeks to collect names and then start going through the process, right? Like I kind of want guys that want to. The problem with like having dad's coach or like some of the other stuff like that is that um, I want to invest time in these guys, my assistants. I want to bring them along. I want them to develop. I want them to be coordinators. I want them to want to be coordinators. I want them to want to be a head coach,
Right.
right? I want to find a 24-year-old version of me to a large
Mhm.
degree, right? A guy who wants
Right.
to learn, will put in the time, is committed. And so for me, that's probably why I'm so willing to have those first year coaches, was
Hmm.
because I felt like they had the you know the right mindset and outlook, right? But
Hmm.
it'd be nice to have some guys that have gone through some stuff and have the time, the time put into huddle already, like know how to go break down film on huddle because
Right.
they've been doing it for a decade, right? And so yeah, that's been one of the surprising things is even here, I thought I'd have maybe a better chance of getting coaches.
Hmm.
I didn't think it'd be as tough as it's been.
Yeah. We needed 4 or 5 after our season. We didn't film until July, I think, last summer. So
Yeah,
it like, and I was texting coaches around the area. I'm like, do you guys like know anybody that needs a coach or wants to coach? We have a stipend or two. Like if they're volunteering, we have stipends. And they were like, no, if you find anybody, let us know because we can't find
yeah,
anybody. And it's
yeah. No,
bad.
it's a real problem. It's a real problem. Plus, I mean, I get it, and I get it, man. You can make a heck of a lot more doing Uber Eats.
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
doing some other gig or something. Like I get it. Like if it's a monetary thing, um, and like I said, like, guys that are having great success still get questioned and doubted, and there's all kinds of reasons why not to do it, right? And I guess if you look hard enough, you can always find those reasons. But I love it. Like I said, I want to find somebody that's passionate about it.
Right.
That's what I want. I want to be surrounded because, like our head coach, I took a new job and I wasn't sure. I didn't really know, the head coach all well. I knew his success. I knew what kind of thing he was. We had a couple good conversations, but I didn't know. And I'm
Right.
crazy. Like I'm loud and scream and stuff at practice. And so like I didn't know how that was going to go over. It went over really well. He's very intense but he has a crazy passion for the game and for the kids.
Hmm.
And truthfully, like the staff was as a whole, I think has that. And it was one of the most enjoyable coaching years I've ever had because everybody was kind of on the same page. So that now I'm thinking about like what I'm doing. It's not just about finding a guy with passion. He's got to fit in with our staff and the culture and the way it goes. And it's like, it's amazing that like I'll be able to find anybody. It's just
Right.
tough. Like
Right.
because if I, of course, maybe it's easier if I only have seven instead of 700 show up. Emails show up. But I thought I would get a little bit more you know, response, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Because you would think as a new coach, oh, they win a lot of games. I want to try to go there and see what they do. You know what I mean? Like if I was out there like, oh, they have an opening, I would at least apply, have an interview, and get that under my belt. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I think, yeah, if your goal is to develop and improve and maybe eventually be your own coordinator, that kind of thing, like being associated with this program would only help you,
Right.
right? Not only from like having the cachet of the name, but also like the experience of coaching with guys that are pretty good.
Yeah.
And seeing the process and see how they go through it and, get be able to pull the curtain back, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
getting to see what we do in the off season, see how the kids lift, see what it actually means, what the culture is like. That from an exposure standpoint, I think it's invaluable for a young coach. Um, but again, like I said, I can't make them do it. And
Hmm.
I'm super protective of it. Like I'm not going to bring in some asshole that screws it up,
Right.
and so, or like a guy that wants to be a one and done or a couple years and done.
Right.
I don't want to do that either. I don't want to invest in a bunch of time into a guy and then not have him around or be like, and so that's part of it too, is trying to, create something, you know, and I mean, truthfully, what I'd love to do is find somebody that could come in and take over when I leave. Because
Right.
eventually I'm going to leave and go be a head coach. So
Right.
I would love to have a guy get a couple more years and somebody like, all right, I'm leaving. You got it, man.
Right.
Um, that's my goal. So hopefully I can find that guy.
So you can hire people as a defensive coordinator, or does the head coach have say in that, or is it just you?
Yeah, I'm going to do the primary stuff, right? So my job is I want to say, hey, we've got, I talked to him like, hey, how many stipends do we have? What do we have? How many spots? Right? Because even like last year, we had spots that we just didn't fill,
Uh-huh.
right? And so, we've got four teams. We got a freshman team, a sophomore team, a JV team, and a varsity. So it takes a lot of coaches,
Yes.
right? Like one of the teams across the highway from us, I think they have like 32 coaches in their
Jesus.
program, right? 32. And so we could be similar, 28 or something like that. So we had some open spots. Um, our freshman class had 60 kids in it,
Wow.
64 kids, right? So like,
Yeah.
and we brought this way. That's why we brought some of them up to sophomore, brought some of the sophomores up to JV type thing. Just try to get some playing time on kids, but takes a lot of bodies, takes a lot of guys. Um, and so what I'm going to do is, like I said, collect the names, and then I'm going to filter through, and we'll meet up in person or we'll Zoom. Right, some of the guys obviously can't get here,
Hmm.
and then from there I'll reduce it down, right? And then I'll
Right.
distill it down to the two or three guys that I think could help us. And then I'll coordinate something with our head coach, right?
Okay.
Like, so I'm not going to waste his time going through the big stack,
Right.
right? If they can't get, I'm going to run my checks and all that stuff and call on them and all those things, and then boil it down to the couple guys I think could help us, and then talk to him about it, and then have another meeting with him and that person, and then review from there. Um, I think I appreciate him letting me be involved completely,
Right.
right? But I also think like I know how busy he is,
Uh-huh.
and like right? Like I want to respect that and be like, I don't, I don't demand a lot, right? So I tend to ask questions to, that I ask questions to get what I want.
Right.
Right. That's one
Yeah.
of my tricks, right? Is I'll just like keep asking questions and act like I don't know. But the whole time, I'm a sales guy. So like I can back him down in the corner. But I just save my chips, right? I save my chips. Like I know like I have 2 or 3 times I can just like, I need this or I want this. Right. But I don't overplay it. I don't throw fits. Right. And
Hmm.
so a couple times last year, I said, hey, just give me this one day, give me 2 days of this and let me know if you like it or not. We had
Hmm.
practicing. And so the two things that I think Coach Care guards the most is his off-season strength conditioning and his practice plan. Those are the two things that if you had to ask him, like, give me the top 2 or 3 things, I guarantee you those are in the top three, those
Right.
two things. And so our strength conditioning is great. I love it. I think we walk the line between being meatheads and being technicians. I think we do a good job of that.
Hmm.
It's not too technical, right? Where we're ultra paranoid about form and stuff, right?
Right.
But we want them to be functional, and then it's like also like, hey, by the way, be a meathead, throw a ton of weight, be aggressive,
Right.
right? So I think I think that's the difficult part. I'd like to see us front squat more. That's the only thing I've ever said to him. I'd like to see us front squat.
Hmm.
And I left it at that. I didn't say I wanted it. Hey, let's switch to this. I was like, I'd like to see front squats.
Hmm.
That was it. He asked me, what do you think we're missing? What do you think we need to add? I'm like, front squats. That's it. Because we squat twice a week. We do all that stuff. I'm like, can we just, on our second leg day, can we do just one period of front? That's it. That's
Hmm.
all I've ever asked. Only to facilitate our ability to handle heavier loads and cleans. Like
Right.
it's not that I believe the front squat versus the back squat. It's not. That's not what it is. Is I just want them to have time and attention in that position of load, so that our cleans will go up. Like
Right.
it's all about And so, but I've never pushed it. I've said it twice. He's asked me twice. I've said the same answer twice.
Hmm.
Right. And then the only time I've ever pushed a chip in on him was a practice plan. I thought our practice plan for our it actually wasn't even for our varsity guys. It was for our JV guys. So like at Park City, we would have like scout time, but the scouts would be provided by the number ones,
Hmm.
right? So that the JV ones versus the JV ones, O versus D, because we're two platoon, right?
Okay.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, let's just all. I was like, because I don't need 6 periods of scout with my scout team.
Right.
They can't provide enough look. They're not durable enough, right? It doesn't help me any. I said,
Right.
I'd rather come down and be your guys' scout team. I'll trade my own team time, scout team time to be your scout team, just so I can see varsity speed. Even if we're
Uh-huh.
playing somebody else's defense, I don't care. Right?
Right.
Like that's still a varsity guy. It's still block destruction, still run fitting. It's still all those things. Right? We play 8 coverages. I guarantee you, we play some sort of version of the coverage that the other people are playing.
Right.
Right? And so, but what the cool thing is now whenever we're going down and we're the scout offensive scout team, so we're defense for the scout providing scout. Our JV defense is getting the scout look from the JVO. And so if the varsity so now my staff can go down and work with the JV defense. So my JV defense in the quarter can call it. I can coach my backers. That guy can coach corners, right?
Right.
Somebody else is running the varsity defensive scout team, right? And then we
Right.
switch. So then the varsity offensive coaches go down and work with the JVQ and the JV
Yeah.
offense, right? And so we're providing a look. We're getting more varsity one looks, speed looks, even if it's running somebody else's stuff. And my JVs are getting as many reps of like self scout 1 versus 1, good on good JV as the
Hmm.
varsity guys. And
Right.
they're getting coached by the varsity coaches.
Right.
So, if you've been in programs where people are like, they treat the JV like an afterthought,
Yes.
or that's
Yep.
what the parents think, right? Or the
Hmm.
kids feel that, right? But it's really hard to say that whenever Eric Care's down coaching the JV offense, or I'm down there with the JV defense, right? It's
Right.
like, well, it's not an afterthought because
Right.
I'm down there,
Hmm.
right? And then you see what happens to your JV team's development over the course of the season because they're getting almost on par the same amount of reps as the varsity guys.
Right.
So by week 6 or 7 of the JV season, they're kicking the shit out of people that they shouldn't be
Right.
because they're not staying on the sideline watching other people play football. And so that was my only thing. I'm like, I hate this. Can we please do it this way? I'm like, give me one day. And if you hate it, I'll shut the hell up. And so we did
Right.
it one day. He's like, no, I like it. Right. And so, you know, I could push, right? Like, but I think I built enough trust in a year with him. I've barely been there a year, not even a year yet, maybe. But I've built up enough trust that if I have an idea, he trusts me. So like when I'm like, hey, I want to start pulling a couple guys, he's like, cool. I think, I've earned the right to do that as the coordinator. Plus, like,
Right.
I wouldn't take the job if I could run my stuff and do my thing.
Right.
Like you know, I love coaching, but like, I'm spoiled. So the head coach I had in Missouri, the head coach I had in Park City, they let me do whatever I want. And
Hmm.
so if I had to go to a place and like, you're going to run our defense, you're going to do my thing, I'd be like, no, I'll just go coach somewhere else. Like I'd
Right.
rather go coach a position group than have to run somebody else's version of a 3-4 or 4-3 or 4-2-5.
Right.
It's not worth it to me. It'd be torture. So,
Right.
um, I try to find jobs where they do allow me to have that autonomy going in. And that's one of the things he promised me coming in. He's like, you can ask my ex coordinator who just got a head coaching job how many times I clicked over on the headset. And he's like, I just don't do it. I'm like, okay, cool. By the way, I'll
Perfect.
mute you if you do. So, kind of thing, right? And so that's, that's what I look for. I think that's smart too. Is that you got to know yourself, right? Like I know who I am and how I am. Like
Right.
if he was going to dictate to me how to play defense, play defense, it would have been trouble. So
Right. That kind of happened at Charleston, even though I was young, was um, the head coach had left the day of the first practice. So it was all like turmoil a little bit. So the defense coordinator got the head job. I
yeah,
became the OC. So the OC spot, we kind of were like, we'll just run what we were running during the summer, slowly start to tweak it to what we all kind of think. The next year, full OC. But what happened was I wanted to do some of this, and then it turned into, well, maybe you need to do this, maybe you need to do this. So I became a little handcuffed, and I hated it.
hmm
You're young. Number one, it doesn't help. Number two, when you get told what to do and you're researching things, you're trying to figure out, and you want to do this, and you get told this, it's terrible. It's awful to just be like, you have to do this. It doesn't allow you to grow as a coach either,
yeah,
I don't think.
yeah. I think, I mean, maybe, yeah. I think that there's in the beginning, maybe that if you came in knowing that, like, hey, you're going to be the OC, but I want you to run the offense within my construct.
Right.
This is the framework. This is the offense. We're going to 80% of your playbook is going to be this, right? You can add in some screen, a wrinkle, a little bit of this, but you're going to run what we run, what the kids already know. Like if you went in, if that was the agreement going in, then
Mm-hmm.
that's the agreement. Like I said, I wouldn't look for those opportunities, right? Like,
Right now.
um, you know, right? Because I know my personality. Maybe if I were 22, 23, I might have been like, cool. But I
Mm-hmm.
also think it's a matter of like, do you go a place where like, if you got the job, let's say you got a job place that was successful and they're like, hey, look, this is what we run. This is all our kids know. From third grade through 12th grade, we run this offense,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're getting the experience of like, let's say you went to like a Tolono, right? Let's
Right.
say you're at Tolono where they've had this amazing tradition, and he's like, hey, you're going to run the offense like this. And you're like, okay, so I'll do that, right? Because I get to be around these guys and learn this and see all these other things and develop and earn my trust, right? But the trade off there is I get to trade a little bit of my creativity for the exposure to this program and how they do things or whatever. But like if like you said, it's not like Charleston was lighting the world on fire.
Right.
It's like, hey man, what's it gonna hurt? And I'm also like, it's just weird, guys like I've changed defenses after winning. We lost the state title the next year. We came back and I changed the defense. Like we at Park City when we went to the 3-5, we went like 22 and 4 in 2 seasons with it. And I
Okay.
changed
Yeah.
it because I didn't feel like we didn't have 3-5 personnel anymore. We had 4-3 personnel, so I switched it.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
And so I
Yeah.
run a 4-3, 4-2-5 defense. I come to Corner Canyon, who's went 63-3 with running a 4-3, right? Paul
Right.
like 4-3 like mod team, and which is my favorite stuff to run, and I didn't run it because I felt like it didn't fit the personnel we had in the building. Right. Like so it
Yeah.
was like as much as I might like a system, I'm also fits my talent because the weird thing is whether you look at when I was Well, I did Missouri as a 4-3, 4-2-5 team, to Park City where we ended up being an odd front, and then back to an even front, and then down here an odd front. My indies haven't changed.
Okay.
Our indies haven't changed. It's the same shit. It's just where we
Right.
start pre-snap, right? So like, um, realistically, like even like making feel like how can you make that change? I'm like, well, my position coaches stuff didn't change. Now maybe a little bit here or there. Like when we were a 3-5 team, we had to work a lot on like rerouting and protecting the seams on
Hmm.
2x2 versus cover three. Um, that went away, right? But because we played so much cover three when we were a 3-5. It's like the man that in practice was one kick 10,000 times versus 10,000 kicks one time. Like we
Yeah.
knew we had to be able to survive any and all concepts in cover three. So like we worked so much on. It's like if you played cover two, you better learn how to defend smash,
Right.
right? So if you're playing cover three versus 2x2, you better be good against four verts. And
Right.
how are you going to handle it? What are you going to do? So we practice it nonstop, so much, that we couldn't practice anything else, right? It's like a veer team that can't throw the ball. Well, they don't have time. You
Right.
only got so much time at practice, right? You're not going to have an intricate pass game,
Right.
well, because you're in mesh drill for 20 minutes every day. You're
Right.
in this, type thing. And so that was maybe part of the reason why I got away from just being that 3-5 cover three all the time, was because I felt like, it just kind of hurt our flexibility. And we were so dependent upon it that when we did have to make changes, we weren't great at it because we had just been practicing cover three 75-85% of our snaps at practice every day since the summer,
Yep.
you know?
Right. I was gonna say how easy of a transition. I was getting ready to say that, and you kind of answered a little bit. Like how easy is a transition to change? Like for a defense, I feel like offense we're stubborn. Offensive guys we're stubborn. Like we can't really change too much, or it drastically switches things sometimes.
Well, what if you're a gap scheme team, right? And you're like,
Right.
okay, we're gap scheme under center 21 team, right? We're a power team. And then you're like, hey, we're going gun. Like, okay, cool, go gun. We're gonna go 2x2. Cool, go 2x2. Can you still run power, Q power? Like,
Yeah.
like, you're still running gap, you're still running trap, you're in a gap scheme stuff, or you're a zone team, you're wide zone.
Yeah.
All right, well then be wide zone, right? Like I think that's the part you gotta understand is like, oh, formationally we can get in different formations, maybe it affords us other things, but like changing your blocking scheme would be crazy, right?
Right.
Like that would be an overhaul. Whereas like I said, like for us, the reason we went to the 3-4 from the 3-5 was because that was my first check, my first adjustment when I was in the 3-5. If I needed to pass, I'd sub in a safety, pull out a backer, because the way we fit our 3-5, that middle stack had no run fit or pass responsibilities. So when I took the middle stack off the field, it didn't affect anybody,
Right.
right? I just got to put the safety in, and now we're playing split field coverage and doing some stuff, whatever we do. So I thought, well, could I do that in the opposite manner? Could I start too high? Everybody has their run fits.
Hmm.
And then I can just check to cover three by personnel, add a backer or walk a safety down. And then he's just a plus fitter for run.
Right.
Right. And so that was the big deal. So that's what we did. The only thing that changed, the only thing that would change is that if we got two pullers, so if we got GT,
Hmm.
right, or if we got
Right.
power, if we got like GH or anything, in our 3-5, that the side, the stack backer to the side where the pull starts didn't have to cross the midline, right? He could stay home. That was just flow away. The middle stack would fit. He'd be the bonus player, right? So in
Right.
fits, stack backer fits. Then we have Forrest and alley from him, right?
Right.
So when we go to the 3-4, that changed. I didn't have that guy anymore. So that was the one change, was that whenever they would go in, that was one thing. In dime, if we got GT, we had to roll over the top.
Right.
And so um, that was the big issue. Was I hate teaching if thens,
Okay.
even to the
Yeah.
point where like in our 3-5, technically we're getting in football theory weeds here. In our 3-5, everybody in the box is a spill guy, right?
Hmm.
Every fit's a spill. Okay. Sort of. So if a team runs ISO,
Uh-huh.
I actually want my linebacker to box it,
Okay.
because where's my safety?
He's over on the side. He's way
He's in the
back.
middle of the field. He's in
Yeah.
the middle of
No,
the field.
Phil.
So if I spill it, As long as I'm spilling the fullback, I'm not spilling the ball to the safety, the too high safety guy. So in theory, it's like, hey, I need you to spill, spill, spill. Unless the block, here's the theory, unless the block comes from second level, then I need you to box it. That would be the rule.
Right.
Spill, spill, box. Oh, I hate that. If second level of the offense, then you got to do that. That's death. That if you ran ISO and he spilled it, and we just lived with it. Now it might only been a yard or two difference, but we just lived with it, right? So in when installing by starting in the 3-4, now the base rule is you cross, you do cross on GT, right? So
Mhm.
now when I add the extra guy, I still cross. I'm not teaching an if then,
Right.
right? So if I call our check to bring that middle guy down and he chases, I don't care. I'm fine with it,
Mhm.
right? And so like for me, it was a matter of like, what's the one problem when we go from the 3-5 to the 3-4? It's I have to teach an if then. And as the inside backers coach, I did it, right? I felt like I was stressing my own guys. But like, but when I teach, if I just taught him that was his base rule, then
Mhm.
I wouldn't have to asterisk the change.
Right.
So actually teaching it 3-4 to 3-5 was actually less teaching,
Right. They don't have to think
right?
it.
And
They don't
so
have to
like
think as much now.
I'm not changing anything. It's just pre-snap alignment.
Right.
It's just pre-snap alignment. You line up here, you play the B gap. If it close, and you're going to get exchanged in the C. That's our whole defense. Well, whether it's the 3-4 or the 3-5, that's still what they're doing, right?
Right.
And then I have to work with the kid who's going to now fit. But realistically, that kid is more than likely. I get to pick out of the two safeties, right? So
Mhm.
I'm picking the one that's probably has the demeanor to thump somebody,
Right.
right? So I'm going to pick the run fitter of the two, and now I'm going to tell him, hey, put your toes at 6.5, go find the ball,
Mhm.
because
Right.
really he doesn't have a gap, he doesn't have pass responsibility. It's hard for him to be wrong,
Right.
right? And so I'm taking the stress off the one backer, and I'm putting the other kid in a position where it's really hard for him to be wrong.
Right.
And so that's how you change it, right? Like I even say like 4-3-4-2-5. I originally put in it was a 4-2-5, right?
Mhm.
But I stopped installing 4-2-5 and installed from the 4-3 because it was really hard to get that nickel. I think I'm getting a little choppy on my side. I might have to pause my video. Can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah.
Um, Give me one second here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can still hear you.
Okay, so let me mess with my internet real quick and see if we can get. You know, so I used to, I was a 4-2-5 guy, and the problem was that that nickel, hard to get that nickel to come back in the box, right?
Right.
Because we installed the 4-2-5, right? But then if I installed the 4-3 and said, hey, you start here,
Mhm.
and when there's trips, go ahead and go out. They inherently understood that better, right?
Right.
So I started saying we're a 4-3 because that's how I would install the defense. I would install the 4-3, right? So I would have the heavier box, the bigger box by
Mhm.
default. And then it made sense when they got lighter, they got thinner in theirs, then our guys intuitively would go walk out,
Right.
right? So again, like people are like, why'd you change from a 4-2 to a 4-3? I'm like, really? Install.
Mhm.
I felt like the install point from the 4-3 helped us more, gave us
Right.
more options because I think it's pretty intuitive for a kid to be like, oh, there's three guys out there. I better go out there.
Right.
Right. And so I think, a lot of times like when people question why I would change defense as much as I do, I think that they see it as this huge overhaul. And I just see it as like put your best 11 kids out there by demeanor and like physicality and speed,
Right.
and block destruction, and spilling is spilling. And you just put them in pre snap positions. So it doesn't impact the day to day work.
Right. Maybe I'm stupid because I am stupid simple. It's just like you said, alignment, like offense out formation. It's kind of out formation. Like it looks like a 4-3, but it's a 4-2-5 principle sometimes if you put the right guy in.
Right.
I'm saying that correctly.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. So it's like we're 4-3, but if you line up in trips, gun trips, well then we're 4-2-5
Right.
because my Sam backer is going to walk out there and play because he sees people out there. It was hard like when they would go like two back 21, we get into like 21 or if they get into 12 and that nickel would want to stand out in space and do nothing.
Right.
Say, hey, no, we need you back in the box, Bubba. We need you
Yeah.
back in here, right? And so that was always the harder part for them to get was that. So I said, well, we'll just start in the box. So started in the box, and then they inherently understand when to widen. That was something, I took notes after my first year as a defense coordinator. I took notes on every practice plan and kept them all and reviewed them at the end of the season, like a 3-ring binder of them. And I just kind of made a note one day, like, can't get the damn nickel back in the box.
Hmm.
Like that was literally my note. Can't get the damn nickel back in the box. And then I realized, as I was reading, I'm like, what if I just had him go there and then, right? And that was the adjustment, right? So
Right.
like in theory, we switched from a 4-2 to a 4-3, and we didn't change a damn thing except how I installed it. How, the vision of it. Like, hey,
Right.
we're a 4-3. This is how we're going to fit it. Oh, wait, we don't need to. You go ahead and bump out. And so that's the same thing with me when like the 3-4, the 3-5. Like, I wanted to run 3 high stuff when we were 3-5.
Hmm.
And I used to take my weak side, my boundary outside linebacker, and
Hmm.
swing him outside of number one when we were playing like quarter, half.
Yeah.
And so, right, because he could run fit from there, and we could funnel that number one inside a little more.
Right.
Plus, like the quick access throws to the boundary, right? That's a real issue.
Yeah.
And so we just put him out there in the way, right? He's already a flat defender. He was already, face of one defender. So why not put him in the flat, put him in the face of one, let the corner play off and inside, right? So that's kind of how we did that. Well, when we went to go to 3 deep, 3 high, we just did it with both backers, right? So we just took our
Yeah.
outside backers and played them like hard corners,
Oh, like
and
like
then took the
yeah, all the
corners
way out there. Yeah. Yeah.
all the way out, right? And then we took the corners and put them on the safety on the hashes like cover two safeties,
Hmm.
right? And so realistically, we installed our 3 high in about 45 seconds because it was all same as. Hey, get in the tight front. Hey, we know what tight front is. All right, hey, Mike and Will, I need you guys to boss. So bump outside on the slots. Got it. And then I need corners. I need you guys both to Betty. Got it. Okay, cool. We're gonna play this coverage. Middle safety. I'm like, hey, you're just gonna match 3 Rob. He's like, got it. So that was the install. Literally walked through install, went to sevens, played it. Like because it was all like stuff we already do. We just pieced it together.
Right.
Right. And so I think that's the part that I think we've done a good job of is the same as stuff. So we'll put stuff in like, nah, it's just this. Don't freak out. It's the same as this.
Right.
Like we have we play like a cloud 3.
Hmm.
We also play a box. It's the same positions. It's just the corners down as versus the outside linebackers down.
Hmm.
Right. It's still low man in the flat, low like a outside hook player, quarter or third middle player, and then another guy over that third or quarter. It's really like if you look at it, like if I just literally did X's and O's and didn't put a C or a B or an S, you wouldn't know you really couldn't tell the difference in the call,
Okay. Yeah.
right? But it's wildly different for me because
Right.
if you're playing, right, if you're a bubble and a screen team, and you're gonna like attack that edge, like do you want to attack a corner or do you want to attack an outside backer? Right? Like, so for me, it's like their impact is personnel, but literally it's the same shape,
Right.
right? It's the same shape by leverage on the field, by leverage of formation. But now I can dictate personnel for those individual matchups.
Right. Glenbard West did that to us a lot. The corners would play safety, or the linebackers go all the way out, and the corners would drop back, and that would screw with our kids for some reason. Like I never really
Yeah.
saw, but everybody's going to the 3-3. Everybody's doing that. Like I see it 7 times. Like everybody
Yeah.
does it, and then they're all
Yeah. I
bumping those
think
guys
so.
out.
Yeah. I think, was it Kid? Is that down Moreau Forsyth? I think he tweeted that the other day that the entire Sangamo conference is like a stack conference.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know Winslow done it forever. They done it forever.
Yep.
I think Athens is doing it and playing like a real aggressive cover one
Yep.
stuff. Like they won't get out of cover one for anything. Um, Yeah. I think there's advantages to it, right? Still a 6-man box. The reason I like an odd front is because it puts less demand on the need for big bodies,
Yes.
right? And whether you're one platoon or two platoon, it doesn't really matter to me. It's either I need 8 guys plus a couple key subs, right? Or I've got to, right? If I've got 5 good O linemen, I only need 3 of them at a time on D line, right?
Hmm.
Instead of 4, right? And so for me, that's always the thing. Like this year, I think we could be an even front, right? I've got a couple really tall defensive ends. I got a couple stout guys on the inside, but I don't know from a 10,000 foot standpoint that makes our team better from a rotation standpoint, because a couple of those guys that I would want to play on the interior also play O line,
Right.
right? And so it's a matter of like, yeah, that would make our defense better, but would that drag down the collective of the team, right?
Right.
Because now those O line guys aren't on the sideline working with our O line coach, right? When we're out there, they're playing extra snaps. Like, you know, is the value maybe situationally and goal line and stuff like that, subbing them in.
Right.
Um, Even though I do think the one kid is he's probably a P5 defensive tackle. Um, and I'm like talking about not using him. And
Hmm.
so full time. Now that's the thing, is if I could get him full time, no offense, well then it would be a no brainer, right? Like
Right.
I just not a big fan of because I don't think it's fair to the kid. It's not
Hmm.
that I don't like sharing. I just don't think it's fair to the kid because I don't give a shit that I'm not going to give a shit on Friday nights that you missed Indy because you're O line Indy,
Right.
right? So if you don't like step down squillies and spill the way I want you to, then you won't be on the field. And so it's like, but it's not fair for me to grade, because I'll grade the kid no matter what, the same
Right.
way. It's not fair to him that he gets graded like the kids that get 40 minutes of Indy a day and he gets 12, right? Like
Right.
he gets some reps during inside run or he gets some reps during this. And that's always my problem, is that I can't lower my standards,
Hmm.
but um, it, and I don't want to, but I hate doing that to a kid. Be like, sorry, man. In the middle of the game, I'm going to yank you out of the game and scream at you. Like, and it's not really fair. So I always have a hard time wanting to do that playing kids. But that's another reason why I like the odd front, is because I don't need 9 starting offensive linemen,
Right.
between the two sides.
Right. Um, People always tell me though they need a big nose guard to play it though. That's why they get away from it. They're like, we need this big nose guard. And I think Nick Davis, I'm friends with Nick Davis. He's from Charleston.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's the first guy to tell me that. He was like, he was at Rose Holman at the time, and he was like, no, you don't. He goes, I figured out real quick. If I have a fast nose guard, it still disrupts everything for the O line.
He's got to be gritty. He's got to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to, and this is one of those mind things that I try to get guys to understand, is that, so our guys nose guards, like the nose guard this year was probably 220, 5'10", 220, 215.
Yeah.
Right? Good size, but like I said, but like whenever, we're facing, I probably the average offensive lineman in Utah is 6'3", 285, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like Polynesians are a real thing, dude. They live and exist. And like when you go against 3 and 4 of them, like and he was my heavy D lineman. At 220, he was the big one,
Oh
right?
wow.
And so, right? And so yeah, my other one was like 205 and the other one was like 210. Now they're both like 6'5", 6'7", but not big heavy guys.
Right.
The So his job is he's two gapping
Uh-huh.
unless he's double teamed. Okay. So unless he's double teamed. So I always tell him, guy, like, look, you want to get double teamed.
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds crazy, but if you get double teamed, your job gets easier because
Mm-hmm.
now you only have one gap. Right.
Right.
So I get them in that mindset of like, oh, please double team me because I want it easier. Because two gapping is legitimately impossible.
Mm-hmm.
It really, really is impossible. So like when by offensive scheme, they take us out of two gapping. When they double team him, then you're going to play one gap.
Right.
Right. And so they kind of get that mindset, like, please double team me because I can execute at a higher level if you double team me. And they love the double teams. Right. So you
Right.
need a kid who's willing to be gritty and tough and crave double teams and play with
Mm-hmm.
high effort. That's the kid. Whether he's 190 pounds or 270 pounds, those personality traits, those markers are more important than maybe the stature.
Right. Then, because when I was at Charleston, 3-4, I was an offensive guy. When he brought me on, he goes, "Nope, you're going to learn defense." So the first defense I had to learn was a 3-4. That's what he did.
Yeah.
That's what we loved. But it was the same thing. We had a kid. He was our fullback. Like we ran I formation. He was our fullback. We put him at nose guard because he's like, you need this 240-pound kid at nose guard. And so then moving up to the suburbs, um, we ran a 4 down front, but then going to a 3-man front. They're like, but we have this fast nose guard, so he even start click with me. I was like, but will he get killed? But he would just zoom by people, or he was, like you said, nitty gritty, like a wrestler. He was a wrestler, so he could do it
Yep.
and never got
Yep.
tired.
Yep. That's it. You know, I played center, and I'd much rather have a kid that was heavy, slow, fine. The
Mm-hmm.
quick guy that was going to make me snap. You know, you're fighting one-handed as a center, at least back in the day.
Yeah.
And so I would, you know, I much rather have a kid that was heavy than fast. But yeah, I think that's the thing is that the kid can't just take play. He can't take plays off. He has to want double teams. You know, because that's the first things people are like, oh, I don't have a nose guard. I'm like, I make them every year.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it's a lot easier to make a nose guard than it is a 5 tech DN that can control the B gap and cross face.
Right.
Like that's the harder. If you really want to get into it, what I ask our DNs to do, right, is play from a 5, a 4, and a 4-eye,
Yeah.
right?
All over the
And
place.
it's not just that it's alignment, is that their rules change, right? So it's like when you're a
Right.
5, you have X set of rules. Base block, reach block, down block, these are your rules.
Right.
You're in a 4. Great. Now, base, reach, and all that changes, right? You're in a 4-eye. Now you have pressure keys and read keys for all those combinations.
Right.
So the complexity level, that was the thing when I first got there that maybe they weren't ready for, was the complexity level, the demand of the complexity for the D line. And so because they were used to being a forefront, I'm a 5, I can just rip up field. No, 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 no. You got to do this, right? And so yeah, I think what I ask my DNs to do requires more talent and skill than what we ask our nose to do. Our nose job is very, very simple. And
Right.
then, like, let's say for whatever reason we go against a team and they have a monster center that can solo all night and make
Mm-hmm.
us 2 gap. Well, then I slant the sucker,
Right.
right? So even then, I'm not gonna ask him to 2 gap all night long. There's just no good comes from it.
Right.
Even though in theory he's a 2 gap nose guard on paper, right? And
Right.
so
Right.
you know, like if I have man to man in my system, we may not run a lot of cover zero. It's my job to protect my kid. Now, if I have a kid who's better in cover zero, then we're going to play a bunch of cover zero. But if I have a 210-pound nose guard who can't 2 gap all night, well, then don't ask him to,
Right.
right? Like that's part of coaching.
Right. Now, because I've been a part of that too, where we run the system. Well, you have to do this. You have to do this. And I fell into that as an O-line coach, and I figured out like, well, if these kids can't do it, they can't do the footwork, they can't do this. Figure out how to get them there. Figure out how to get them to this spot. Why am I making them do this? Like, because I'm a big zone guy. Well, this year I have to come to the realization if we can't move people vertically, maybe that's not the best thing to do at all.
Yep. Yeah, it's tough, man. Like I coached O line for a few years. You could not pay me enough to go back to O line.
Oh, it's the
It's harder than coordinating,
best. It's the best.
and it's hard. I think it's harder than coordinating because you got to get 7 kids that can do it.
Yeah.
Right. And like you said, and how they do it, the shape, what it takes for each individual kid to get there is hard because, you know, like sometimes it's a matter of like, I played O-line.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's really confusing for me. How come you can't get your hands on that guy and stay balanced and drive him? Because I don't remember ever having an individual period in my life growing up, really. You know, like our practices weren't scheduled that way. I don't remember getting taught a whole lot of technique. That's the guy, the ball's going there. Cool. He's not going to make the tackle. Right. So
Right.
sometimes for me, it's like, I think that's why I've done better, maybe like backer and other positions is because I had to think about it from like the ground up. Like, why was I probably a good track coach? I had no dogma. I had no preconceived notions.
Right.
Right. Why was I a good wrestling coach? Same thing. I don't know anything about wrestling. So I just knew what I needed to learn and how to explain it. And so I inherently had to learn it myself, which made me better at teaching it. Whereas like O line, like, I don't know, dude, the ball's going to your right. The guy's there, yeah, block his ass the hell out. Right.
Right.
Like, at times I didn't have the ability, and especially as a young coach, to be able to explain it in different ways, to be able
Right.
to get 7, 8 guys all on the same page and maybe have to teach it 6 different ways.
Yeah.
Right. And whereas like I don't know that any other position, maybe corner. I think corner and O line are really similar. Right. I think corner and O line are similar. I think D line and wide receiver are similar. Right. Like it's just
Right.
they are obviously, it's one of those weird ones, right? Like, um, but I think because like you get kids at corner that have different sizes and shapes and abilities and movement and all that stuff, but yet they essentially have to be able to do all the same thing, and you can't coach them almost systematically. It has to be tailored so much.
Right. If you want them in a certain stance and they can't do it, they don't have the hips, but they can get to the same spot a different way. You have to do that. Then you have to make
Yep.
sure, like, well, Johnny over here looks different than John Doe over here because, well, that's how they're built. That's how they're able
Yep.
to get there.
Yep. Exactly. Like I'm 5'11". I have a 29-inch inseam. Right. So like
Right.
most guys that have a 29-inch inseam are like 5'4". Right. So
Right.
like, my body shape, like me coming out of my stance, my body shape is completely different than like my guard that I grew up playing with was 6'3" and probably had a 36-inch inseam. Right. And so like the way he had to block was sure as hell. Like I never lost a leverage battle in my life. Right. Like my center of gravity is roughly a foot and a half below me. Right. Cause I'm this wide and my legs are that tall. I'm never off balance. Whereas a guy like that, who is all arms and legs,
Right.
for him to be able to block the same guy as me is a completely different game. And then for the challenge for you as an O-line coach is not what's the shape look like at the snap. It's a beat and a half into the play. Do they all look the same?
Hmm.
Right? Like you said, like, can they get there? Right? Like I had a kid, a linebacker a couple years ago was like that. His linebacker stance made me want to puke every time I saw it. Right. And so I went in there and I'm like, no, come on, stick your chest out, get here. I literally have to force him into position, right? And then snap the ball. He'd go back to his little slumped position and then take
Right.
off like a rocket. I'm like, dude, Grant, get in a good stance. He'd get in that good stance I taught him, and then the ball would snap and he'd get in that weird position and then take off. Finally, I'm
Right.
like, just line up however the hell you want. And then he was even faster. Right.
Right.
Like, so I was actually coaching him to be slower because he couldn't operate in that
Right.
look. But boy, if you left him alone and said, hey, do you see this? Go here, trigger. He's a bad man.
Hmm.
But like, if I tried to make him look like some picture, some Patrick Willis, Brian Urlacher, no, he looked like a dog shit in chicken bones. His back was all slumped. Dude, it was wild. But little sucker ran 4.6 and ran it and was at full speed in 2 steps.
Wow.
And so, you know, don't be dumb. Don't be dumb. Let the kid, for whatever reason, that's how he had to play. But yeah, man, you couldn't pay me to go back to O line. Not a chance. Not a chance.
Well, that's how I was able to find jobs up here, moving from, you know, living in Charleston for 6 years, coached every position, moved up here. The head coach at Lombard East, he actually coached at Charleston in the 90s. That's how he kind of figured out like to bring me in. And he goes, but what have you coached the most? And I said, O line. He goes, okay, you'll be an assistant O line coach. And then what happened? Well, another high school, I need an O line coach. We don't have one. So there you go. And then where I'm at now, well, we need a guy that knows the run game and O line. So you're coming in. So it's just my niche.
No, it's good. And like, if you look at the hierarchy of like a program, like, I think a lot of guys, there's 3 names that come to the top and your order changes, right? Like, I think, I think the most important non like head coach position and all that kind of stuff. First thing is like I think you have to have a great freshman coach.
Mm-hmm.
I think your freshman program, you have to have a guy down there, and he's got to have different qualities than maybe what other guys would want. But you have to have a dude down there that makes it fun, creates great relationships, gets the kids to the following summer so their bodies have a chance. There's not the disparity between 14-year-olds and is amazing. So getting them to that year 2, I think your O-line coach, right, is wildly important, and then strength conditioning. Now, you can list those 3 however the hell you like, but if you don't have those 3 things, you're not going to have success.
Right.
If you can't block people, if you're not getting stronger, if you're not keeping kids around, then you've got nothing,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but they were like, our head coach now, he did it, but he played linebacker in college. So when I showed up, it was kind of like, I said, so what'd you do before? And he goes, like you said, well, I just told him to hit him. And then here's my mind, like, well, how did you get them there? Like, how did you pull on power? How did you do this? And they're like, well, I just told
Yeah.
him to get there. I just told him to get
Yeah.
there. I'm like, well, hold on. Here's my dumbass coming in, like, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this footwork. And they were like, every coach was like, that's you. We don't want it. That you got it.
Like that sounds great, Steve. Yeah, no, and I get that. Like that's like I was technical, but I didn't have the depth of knowledge.
Right.
I like, hey, when you pull, I need you to just open up. I need this. I need you to get across the line of scrimmage on trap and come back into the trap block. Right. I don't need you like I need to look like this. Like I could describe it, but like if that initial explanation or technique didn't work, I was scratching my ass. Like I was
Yeah.
like, he just can't do it. Getting that lazy coach shit, right? I guess he just can't do it. And it's like, no, well, he probably can. But you're just gonna have to fight like hell to find out how he can do it, right? Like,
Yep.
um, you know, that's I think that's comes with age and experience. You have a chance to be able to do that. But like, that was my problem. As whereas like a linebacker, I feel like I've matured a little bit, but also like I just have like a novice's approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I came in, I'm like, okay, I know nothing really about playing it. I played it a little bit in high school, but I didn't, I just played. Like, we didn't have enough depth to bring in the linebackers in when someone was tired or hurt, but we
Right.
had more linemen, so they would bring a lineman in and stand me up to play Mike. Again, fine ball, see ball, hit ball, right? Like nothing
Right.
technical at all. So when I went into I realized I was going to have to coach linebackers. I dug in it with completely open and overstudied and looked at everything I could get my hands on to see what made sense to me as like someone who really never played the position. Because I figured if my system or my teachings made sense to me, that was probably a greater chance that they would make sense to the kids
Right.
versus maybe somebody who had played it their entire life, and maybe took things for granted or understand it from the eyes of the person that taught them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So because I wasn't taught how to play linebacker and I wasn't taught how to coach linebacker. I had to go out and figure it out, um, which, um, which is how I approach like track and wrestling. Right. And I've reproduced that like kind of ability to learn from there, like no dogma, no attachment, like what works, what actually works.
Right.
Right. Like, and so I think that's like, if I went back to O-line now, I think I might be able to reteach myself. I also do think there's a shit ton more resources for O-line play in the
Yeah.
past decade than
Yeah.
ever before,
Yep.
right? And so I think that's one of the neat things too is that um, there are more resources out there. Twitter wasn't really a thing then, as far as like the PD part of it, right? I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
remember getting on like when O-line TV, O-line.tv, right? It was Charles Bentley when he first started that stuff. It was like that was the address, like the website.
Right.
And I remember being on there and stuff and like literally getting it. The funniest thing is like LaCharles, which is not shocking that we got into it a little bit one time because he's pretty opinionated. But the funny thing was is that I was talking about like a anti-inflammatory diet, like paleo and no nightshades and all this stuff and a high alkaline, all that stuff. And he told me I was an idiot, which is now what he follows. So that's always a victory when I see like him. I'm like, hey, you remember whenever you were talking shit about me on that thing because I was an idiot, but yet now so but that's even to like that is like you don't know what you don't know. And so like to see the development of that, I think if I ever went back to O-line, which like I said, I don't know that you could pay me, if I got stuck and had to, or like when I'm an old retired guy and I want to help out,
Right.
maybe I could reteach myself how to do O-line, right? Like,
Right.
but yeah, man, I do not envy you guys down there, man. Like we have a great, I think arguably, I think we have the best O-line coach in the state. He does an amazing job. And but and also, I mean, he does have like there are like four O-line coaches. Like it's our deepest position. I swear we have like four O-line coaches.
Well,
Like
it's always been me. When I was at Lombardese, it was me and another guy. He was the main guy. I was the assistant. So I've never
yeah,
had that before where it was like, Steve, you're going to watch the inside. I'll watch the tackles or vice versa, whatever it was. Or you watch this side, I watch this side. We're all good. And I'm like, this is a game changer right here.
yeah. yeah, and nice thing too is like they have a guy who only films tight, like the tight angle at practice.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's
they
the
get
only
like a
one.
tight end zone shot of the O line, one on ones, anything, pass rush, inside run. They have a tight box O line shot to review
Right.
because they have the guy, because if you're coaching, you can't really film.
Hmm.
But if you have a couple guys coaching, one guy filming, man, it is it's pretty awesome. Like that's like again, what's the value in coming to a place like Corner Canyon over maybe going and being a head coach? I now know why their O line plays so consistent
Right.
because they have four guys, they have the video of it. Like what we might miss team time on film, we are not missing. Our O line staff doesn't miss a snap, right? I mean,
Right.
it's their iPad, their film, right? They upload it to Huddle, but man, it is not. They don't leave it anything to chance. I'm like, oh, that's why. That's just a huge piece of what they do, right?
Right.
Like that's like so for me, like if and when I leave, better damn well believe I'm stealing the hell out of that, right? Like yeah, I'll
Yeah.
put a student manager up in the bleachers and let them shoot me on all 22, and then I'm going to have one about 5 steps behind the quarterback, getting that tight shot where film's cruel mistress. You don't
Yeah.
miss steps, like and so yeah, it's definitely one of the cooler things we have is that they get that shot every day.
That must be nice because I need that in my life, but I'm by myself. So it's
Yeah,
can't do it.
you guys get any drone film yet?
I never seen drone film until I got to Glenbard East up here when we moved up here. He did it. Head coach did it. He did it himself, called the play, did it himself. He did it all. But then there's some schools here you can't do it for some reason. It's a conference rule or it's whatever, and it's the stupidest thing ever.
Dude,
You can't do it.
we did a scrimmage and a team came down and they flew their drone and then shared the film with us. I was like, that's the most bullshit thing ever. I'm like, now I have to have a drone. Like I
Yeah,
have to have drone film,
yeah. It's a game
right? Like I
changer.
just have to now. Right. I'm like, it's so good. It's so stupid good. And like this year the problem though is like when like we're split because the head coach is the man, the
Mhm.
freaking drone goes with him. So I'm like, all right, next year we're getting two drones. And now I'm like, just
Right.
stupid. Like now I got to find two more filmers. So that's a sideline shot, the O line guy shot, two drone filmer. I'm like, and my buddy jokes that we're a D2 school. He always jokes around that at D2 life.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's a game changer. We had it when we had it at Lombard East. He was like, "Steve, have you ever seen this before?" I was like, "No, we're at Charleston. We're doing handheld. We got the end zone up." And he goes, "No, look at this," and does it. And we're watching it. And I'm like, "Oh my god, oh my god!" And then I went to East Aurora right after, and they had it. Well, then the battery thing
yeah,
broke, and they wouldn't replace it. So I got real mad. I was like, "No, it's gone. Like it's done."
yeah, yeah. That's one of the off-season things. We had ones they were okay. Battery life is always an issue. There's a local Utah company that does drones, and they have like their batteries go like 48 minutes or 54 minutes
Hmm.
each.
Yeah.
So like, right, I don't have to drop it down once for practice. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll save up or we'll find some funds and get something that, you know, makes more sense for us.
Right. That was the only good part was, it will just drop itself down really quick. So when it would during offense, or team time, as soon as it come down, it goes, all right, water. So he could do it and then like go
Nice.
right back up. So it
Love
was
it.
never an issue. But again, since the head coach was the offensive guy, it kind of went towards offensive stuff
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, exactly. Right.
I
Like I'll
just,
look over and like the drone's in the air, I look over and it's not facing us. I'm like, yeah, I guess we don't get the drone today, boys. So we would get it during like competitive, time. Like if we went good on good or like third and sit or,
yeah,
that kind of stuff, end zone, like red zone stuff, we would get it. And that was nice.
right.
Or like we finish every day with 2 minute drill,
Yep.
good on good 2 minute drill.
Yep.
And we would get that. So that was always fun.
Yeah.
So
Illinois, you can do joint practices now. And so we did that in a couple of teams. We go there and they would have the
yeah,
drone. And it just made us more mad actually because we were like, well, this looks great, and they'd share it with us so we could see, and we're like, this looks great, and we get pissed off like,
yeah,
oh wait, our conference or school won't let us do it. Like,
that's wild. Yeah. Yeah. No, like it spoils you. Like when I saw it, I'm like, okay, well, we have to get a drone now.
Yeah.
Like I can't go back. I was perfectly happy before I knew what this existed. Right now that I knows it exists, I can't not do this.
Right.
So
Sometimes too much of a good
yes.
thing is a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I lived in St. Louis before I moved back and moved in with my wife, we had like a plasma TV and like all this stuff. Like we were bachelors, we had all the goodies, right? I
Right.
moved my wife and she had like a tube TV, right?
Uh-huh.
And this was a long time ago, but like it was literally a TV, like the flat screen, but it still had a tube. I'm like,
Yeah.
nope, we're gonna have to go buy something. Like I can't go backwards in technology. Like I can't go back, right? Like, and that's the same thing as the drone. Like, oh, now that I know it exists, I can't watch just a normal
Yep.
video,
Yep.
even from elevations, not the same because the pitch and the height and all that stuff's not the same. So
Right.
yeah, ruined me, ruined me.
Yes. Especially when you're watching the box on like defense or offense, you can't beat it. Can't beat it.
No, you can't. Really, really can't. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Like I said, now we're, of course, like I said, we try to get over out of control with it and get 2 drones, and now we'd have 4 practice films, and sometimes you're like, okay, you're being a little bit crazy, right? Like, so
But no, you need that stuff. Um, but you did make a good point to me about coaching online. I wanted to bring back up because I thought about it. I
yeah,
was like, yeah, I do the same thing. If I look at a kid going, how did you not block him? Because I think back to me, like, well, could I have gotten there? And I have to take myself back and like, because I have a six freshman, 300-pound kid right now. He's a
nice,
freshman, but and I realized I was trying to put him in the stance and he's uncomfortable looking and how do I fix it? But I'm this guy like, nope, you have to get in the stance. And this is one of the first years where I went individually to each kid and changed things for them. And
right,
and like I think it took me a long time. I'm 32 now, and I've been coaching since I was 19. And it took me like this long to figure out like they don't how I have to be the same. But I then I thought back to Charleston when I became an OC. I coached quarterbacks because I was just like offensive guy has to coach quarterbacks, and I went
right,
into it not knowing a thing. Like you said, I didn't
yep,
know a thing about it, and I loved it my first year. Loved it. I was like, this is new. I'm working on this. I'm working on this until my second year. Then I got bored. I was like, this is the
yeah,
most boring position I've ever done in my life
that's funny.
because I couldn't hit. I would look down
All
over like
right,
linebackers and I couldn't hit.
yeah, no, I bet. I mean, it's different, right? Like I did like coaching running backs probably the best because I got to teach the running backs what the O line was actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I taught the running backs to see the game through O linemen's eyes, which I think was effective.
Right.
Um, and I'm just like, I can get crazy obsessive compulsive about stuff. So like ball security and that kind of thing. But that's really all I did was get my guys to understand what the O line was seeing
Right.
and taking care of the ball. But I had so much fun with it. They're like, well, should I cut here? So I'm like, I don't tell you guys to do that stuff. Like if you don't know when to cut or when to bounce it or do that kind of thing, like you're probably not going to be the starting running back. So it's probably not an issue. But like if you don't push the hole and do the things that make the offensive lineman right, then you really don't have a chance. Like the
Right.
difference between the number one running back and the number two running back is number one guy makes really explosive cuts and knows what he's doing inherently,
Mm-hmm.
right? But all you guys can actually understand where the play is supposed to be ran, what you're looking for. Because we ran a lot of stuff, and it wasn't like we weren't like it was concept based. So like midline right or trap right. It wasn't like 42 this or 24 that. Like it was, we would just run midline to the right, and I didn't know the rules. At first man head up or outside the guard. So if you
Right.
had a one technique, we're going to leave the five. If you got a three, we're going to, like you had to be able to change your aiming points and launch points. And so being an O lineman that, I could explain them what the O line was, I always enjoyed that a lot because it was like, I could teach them through that vantage point. And like I said, I had no preconceived notion about being a running back,
Right.
right? Like, I had nothing built up. Like you said, like I think I could have got there.
Yeah.
Whether you could or you couldn't doesn't impact the kid, right? But like I just didn't have that when it's like, I'm not worried about, this kid's jump cut. I'm like, I played with one foot on the ground at all times pretty much. So
Yeah.
there was no jumping.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah. I'm at that point now where as long as I don't false step, I don't care. If you're going forward or going the way I need you to and you don't false step, I'm getting to that point now where I don't care what your footwork is as long as you get there as an offensive line. That's the point I'm getting to.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. Like it's, you hate to be like outcome driven, but like like I said, the shapes change.
Mhm.
The shape, the how you can move efficiently versus someone else's may look different outwardly, expressed outwardly through your body differently. But
Mhm.
if the movement's the same, right, we're achieving the same downforce and angles and hand placement and understanding, which hand am I trying to be heavy on and get my cleats in the ground before I make contact at the second level and all those things. Like how they get there probably doesn't matter as much as long as they're doing those pieces of it, right? And it's either your coach, it's a fine line. That's part of coaching though, right? It's like what's too much, what's not enough, right? That's what separates the good guys from the okay guys.
Right. Right.
Oh,
Um,
I lost him again. Yeah. All right. Well, Steve, I got to run, man. I got a coaches meeting, but I do appreciate you having me on, man. This was fun. We'll have to do it
but
again.
yeah, I appreciate you coming on. Guys, I'll put coach's Twitter in the bio. Great defensive minded guy. I will be asking you to come back again. I'm going to annoy you to bring you back on. That's what I'll do. But I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Guys watching or listening, thanks so much. And we'll see you next time.